Welcome in, folks. My name is Pete Nova from the Face Off Sports Network. I am joined by my co-host, William Stevenson. And today we're going to talk about three running back breakouts for the 2024 fantasy football season. Our first player we're going to talk about today is Jonathan Brooks. Now, Jonathan Brooks, right now, he is currently on the PUP list and he is not practicing. He did have the ACL injury in the offseason. In college, he suffered that coming out, but he was a highly touted running back prospect, and many thought without the injury had a good chance to go first round in this NFL draft. Now, he could take a slow start to get going, but currently his ADP is running back 28 and his ADP is 84. So, when you're drafting Jonathan Brooks, depending if you're going zero build, zero RB build, or you're going for a hero RB build, or you just like to take two highly talented running backs at the top of the draft, Brooks looks like a guy that could be solid to take as like your fourth running back, given where he's going in drafts. And then you back him up with some other players that might see some time rather quickly, like an Ezekiel Elliott, who may fall off later on in the year, or maybe even like a Devin Singletary, who should see some good volume to start the year. Now, Jonathan Brooks joins a team with a new head coach in Dave Canales. Rashad White is a perfect example of how Canales likes to use running backs in his system. Rashad White had 70 targets in this backfield last year, and he was running back in the top 5 for running backs. I think he had somewhere in the 60s for receptions, and so if Jonathan Brooks, who showed he can be a pass catcher as well, could be used in that way once he gets back on the field, he could provide pretty sneaky value in fantasy this season. Will, what about you?
Well, you mentioned his pass catching. That's one of the things that I would compare him to two guys that we all really love in fantasy, with Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey. Coming out of college, Brooks had an 86% reception percentage as per PFF. That's higher than CMC at 82 and Barkley at 81%. His PFF rushing grade was 92. That's higher than CMC's 80.4 and Barkley's 83. And not to mention that, then once he gets the ball and he's moving, his elusiveness score is a 140. That almost doubles CMC's, and it clearly doubles Barkley's. This is the last year of college coming out, right?
Sure.
And then you bring up the value. You can get him down, around round 7. And if you like to take, these later running backs, you could pair them then a couple rounds later. If you want to reach in round 11, but Chuba Hubbard's going around 12, and you lock up that backfield. You're talking about someone who's going to get early work. Well, if Brooks is going to be out until halfway through the season, I don't see anyone other than Chuba Hubbard being the one to get the work there. So you lock up that backfield and you're good to go.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point. I mean, Miles Sanders is there. We talked about him possibly being a casualty cut due to cap space. Rashad Penny just retired. Actually, they do have another younger back, but I think this is Brooks and Chuba's backfield once they come back. And this is a team that their defense probably won't be very good. So they may be playing from behind, which could lend some more opportunities in the pass game. So we're going to move on to our next running back here. It's going to be Zamir White. He's going off the board at pick 66. He's running back 23. So he's a little bit more expensive than Jonathan Brooks. But, the thing about Zamir White is, this Raiders offensive line has been pretty bad over the years, but last season they were actually one of the better run blocking offensive line units in the NFL. I think, with Antonio Pierce at the helm, I believe this team is going to be a ground and pound and lean on the defense to set up the pass. The team just announced Gardner Minshew is going to be the starting quarterback, which I think does lend a little more help to Zamir White, because I think Aiden O'Connell teams will probably stack the box on a lot more. So Zamir White, let's talk about it. I mean, last year he averaged 4.7 yards per carry on 84 touches for 397 yards in the 4 games as the starter with Josh Jacobs out in 2023. Now, that's a guy that got a really significant workload. The team really liked what they saw, and I think it was kind of like a tryout for them to see, hey, is this a guy that we can go into next year and lean on to be our starting running back? This team didn't really bring in much competition. They bring in Dylan Luab in college. They drafted him, who probably will serve as possibly a pass catching back, but he's still going to have to prove it. He's still a younger guy. And then they bring in Alexander Madison from the Vikings, who kind of fell flat on his face last season, and didn't really. He had every opportunity to be the starting running back for the Vikings with Dalvin Cook leaving, and he really just couldn't show that. So it's going to be interesting to see how this running backfield shapes up. Madison and as of right now, Zamir White did get the starting touches in preseason, but Alexander Madison did slot in for some work as well with the starters. So we'll see how this backfield is utilized. But I think right now, if I had to put my projection for Zamir White, I think he's a solid running back 3 with potential RB2 upside. As somebody who likes to kind of kick the running back can down the road this season and draft heavy at wide receiver, you can pair Zamir White up with, even like we said, like a Jonathan Brooks and Chuba Hubbard, and maybe even draft one of these other really cheaper backs, and you can get like a Najee Harris in that round too if you want to double dip at the running back position, or like a B-Rob or Javonte Williams, who are 2 guys I think see 250 plus touches this year. This is a big opportunity for Zamir White. I loved him coming out of college, and I think he has a chance to break out this season. He'll be given every opportunity, and if this Raiders offense can be even slightly average with this good defense that they are going to trot out this season, Zamir White's going to be given a solid opportunity to be the starting running back this year and going forward, and provides solid upside and a potential to break out in 2024.
Yeah, I agree. And to be upfront and honest, I am a long-standing card member of the Zamir White Fantasy Football Truthers Club. I drafted him in multiple dynasty leagues when he came out as a rookie, and for some reason, every time I'd get in my roster and I go, "Oh, it's time to say goodbye," I couldn't pull the trigger. And now I'm really glad that I never did cut him from any of those rosters. When he started those 4 weeks. Last year, I think it started in week 14. He got he was ranked 3rd in total rushing yards, right?
Right.
That's RB3 in total rushing yards. That's definitely not going to go anywhere. I think it's only going to go up when you look at what you were saying. The Vegas Raiders really aren't that great of a team. They're not going to be a good team. No one expects anything. It's going to be, hot potato with whoever the quarterback's going to be from week to week.
Sure.
But the one steady you're going to have is going to be Zamir White, and he's going to pound that rock, and he's going to keep pounding it, and they're going to continue to trust him. When you have a team around you that's kind of untrustworthy, at least you got one thing, they're going to use it. And when you think about it, if they're going to play a defensive game, like you said, they're going to let the defense, set up the pass. What's the key there? You want to try and get up early, and you just want to run the clock out, right? So that's got to be part of their game plan. Is get up early if we can, as close as we can, and then when they do, just run it out and run the clock out. It might be some low scoring, kind of boring games, but that's going to be good for Zamir White and your fantasy team.
Yeah, I think White will provide a pretty good floor, and if looking at it even from a dynasty lens, this Raiders team probably goes and drafts a quarterback or acquires one next offseason. And if White can stick with this roster and continue to give a good impression, he could be set up to be in a pretty good offense next year. And for what it's worth, that Josh Jacobs faced a lot of loaded boxes on this offense last year, and they were daring them to throw. Gardner Minshew is definitely a step up. I'm not in love with Gardner Minshew, but he did, he did his job when he was tasked to do so with the Colts. And they got that offense moving. And they bring in Brock Bowers. They have Michael Mayers. They have Jacoby Myers. They have Devontae Adams. Like, those are guys that like should be enough to stress the defense out where they can't completely cheat and stuff the box. So I definitely think Zamir White's a decent value here.
I would agree.
Yeah. And then, so moving on to our last guy here, it's Isaiah Pacheco. He is running back 10. He's going running back 10 right now in some drafts, depending on where you're drafting. He goes around 12 as well, but his ADP is 20 right now in redraft. Some might think it's a little expensive. Others, like myself and Will, actually happen to really like his cost. I mean, if you're a guy that's drafting and you're a later pick in the first round and you go wide receiver, running back, it's kind of murky, the rest of the guys after that by the time it comes back to you at pick 20, or if you're in that range. And Pacheco, for what it's worth, had a really good year last year. I think this is the best running back that this Chiefs offense has had since Jamal Charles. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they drafted him in the first round, and he was kind of just wasn't the guy. They had a chance to get Jonathan Taylor that year, and they passed for Clyde. I'm sure they wish they could have done that back. But, Pacheco last year, 9th in red zone targets for running backs, 8th in rushing attempts in the red zone. That's pretty good for a guy who's got Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice, who Kelce was 2nd in receptions in the red zone last season, and Rashee Rice was top 10 in red zone targets. So those guys were definitely looked and called upon, and Pacheco was still able to make hay and get a lot of looks down at the goal line. And this is an offense that we expect to be down in the red zone, probably top 5 this year, unless they're hitting a bunch of extremely long passes and long touchdowns that they score from outside the 20. The last note note I will make here is, he's going to be a 3-down back. There's not really much competition behind him, and he's going to be given every opportunity to be the guy. The only worry I have is this guy runs hard. And he's a guy that like runs with reckless abandonment, and that can be a little bit dangerous. He's not really one to avoid contact and try to evade a tackle. He's one that's going to put his face mask into your face mask and try to run right through you. But he does provide a lot of burst and a lot of quickness, and he is a solid pass catching back for what it's worth. So I like Isaiah Pacheco this year. I think we may be looking back next year, and this guy may be being drafted even higher than the RB10. And I think he's a really solid pick and has a really high floor for fantasy this season in an awesome offense.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I think he will be being drafted much higher than he is this year. I think we're drafting him at his floor, which anytime you can draft an RB1 at their floor, it could be a season winning pick. I'm getting him as my, some rounds, or some leagues in the second round, some third or fourth, depending on where you're drafting and who you're drafting with. But
Sure.
That allows me then to get a stud wide receiver if you want to go 2 stud running backs. So, if I can get a stud wide receiver and then an RB, one, a high end or mid to high end RB1 possibly, and Isaiah Pacheco, sign me up all day. I'm golden. I mean, I'll draft whoever I want the rest of the way. And you were saying something about the way he runs, and that's wow, it's really funny. Some of the quotes you get out of there. He runs like the ground owes him money, right?
Yeah.
He runs like he's running away from a bunch of bees, right?
Yeah.
But that's I love seeing that. That's just one of those things that he is. He's going to get in there. You love seeing it. He wants to be on the field. He's just got he's foaming at the mouth, trying to get to the end zone. It's fantastic to see. We had mentioned before the show started, we were talking about being the Chiefs being high in screen passes, and what did they do last year? They had to, maybe some of it was injury, but I think a lot of it was being smart and keeping Travis Kelce somewhat in a box, because they know They know they're not playing for weeks 1 through 7. They know where they're going to be. They know
Sure.
it's Super Bowl or bust. They know if they want to win that Super Bowl, they need to have a healthy Travis Kelsey. So if they're going to be dumping the ball off a lot, why not? Why wouldn't it go to Isaiah Pacheco? I think that where we're drafting him right now, we're going to be very happy to have a stud running back in round 2.
Yeah, I agree. And to your point, again, I mean, most of the people listening to this show are drafting in home leagues, right? And so, like, you have a lot of guys that'll start drafting quarterbacks late in the second round and pushes guys like Pacheco into the mid third. And I've been in drafts already this season where I've seen it happen. So I definitely think Pacheco is a really nice pick this season, especially if you're going for kind of it's not a zero RB build, but if you have a chance to double up at receiver in the first 2 rounds and possibly get him, especially if you're drafting in the first few picks in the first round, even you get a guy like Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase in the 103, 104 spot, you have a chance to double up on receiver in the second round and then come back in the
Yeah.
early third and get Pacheco, which could turn out to be a really nice value. To your
And
point.
even in sorry, and even in
No, no,
two
go ahead.
quarterback or super flex leagues, what are you usually sacrificing there? You're in the first round. You're going to either sacrifice the stud quarterback or the stud running back. There's plenty of
Yeah.
wide receivers that typically fall. So Isaiah Pacheco allows you to go ahead and feel comfortable drafting that top 5 quarterback in the first round and then coming back around and scooping up Isaiah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But yeah, great show here. Appreciate you guys for listening. Thanks, Will, for hopping on. First one for him. We will
For
continue
having me.
to provide more content for you guys going forward. But tune in and we'll see you next time.